Today you have Kerry Baker. I always love having Kerry and Carol Ponton. And we're here with the Hill and Ponton podcast. This is our chance to answer the questions that you have that will help you win your cases before the VA. So I encourage you to send us questions that you have, and we'll be glad to answer them. We try to answer as many as we can. And what Nate's been doing is he's been going through, and if they're duplicate questions, he's been trying, once we've answered them, trying to get rid of those so that we get a chance to answer everybody. So Nate, what's our first question? Nate, something's covering that. Okay, private chat. Let me get rid of that. Carol and Kerry really need this one answered. Scheduled for a virtual C&P exam at 3 p.m. today. Any suggestions and what should I expect? The first thing I would ask is, what is it for? Don't you think, Kerry?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what you should expect, kind of not knowing what you're going to be examined for. Yeah, it's just too, and it's a virtual C&P exam, so it's, I'm assuming it's something that they don't need to physically examine you for. Yeah, that's hard to answer without knowing what it's for.
If it's for mental, remember to get the DBQ, the Disability Benefits Questionnaire, down. We have all of them up, and also the VA has them. You go into VA DBQs, you can get those for whatever it is you're being examined for. So if it's mental, I suggest that you read that form really quickly and make sure you have an answer for each one of the questions. And I think you should point out what's the worst part of the mental problem for you. If it's PTSD, remember that the VA has a very firm rule that if you don't meet each one of the criteria, so that on the DBQ page 4, it starts criteria A and goes all the way down. And if you don't have something for each one of those criteria, the VA says you can't possibly have it. So make sure that if you have a problem for each one of these things, you express it to the examiner. The other thing is, I think that this is the chance to let the examiner know what your family and your friends and you have been dealing with. So I think in order to show that, you need to treat them the way that you've treated your family when you wished you hadn't. That's the only way to get a true picture of what's going on in your life. If it's for headaches, that's another one I find I do virtual. Remember, there are only 3 questions that really make any difference on that long form. One is that you have at least one a month, and that you have to lie down, rest because of it. But they use the word prostrating, and a lot of people don't understand what they're talking about. So prostrating is basically resting, laying down to rest. And then the third thing, so once a month is 10%, prostrating is 30%. And then if you cannot work during these headaches, that's 50%. So if during a headache you have to be in a quiet, dark room, no smell, no noise, then you clearly can't work during that time. So these are the things that you need to make sure that the examiner is aware of. Other than that, can you think of any others that would be online, Kerry?
No, not off the top of my head. I mean, most of them are online, but yeah, I just, I can't give better advice than getting the DBQ and
Right.
going, that way, what's, at least have an idea what's going to be asked. That's probably the best thing you can do.
Right. And so when they call, by the way, Kerry is being a great sport. He is sick and he is still in here working with us today. So Kerry, thank you. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
So when you're called for a C&P exam, the first question you ask is, what is this for specifically? And if the person can't tell you, say, well, hang up and go find out and call me back, because that's really important. That determines which DBQ, Disability Benefits Questionnaire, you get. Okay, that's crucial. Second thing I always say is these people want to run you all over the country. You have a right to have that C&P exam close to where you live. So if they're trying to make you drive 30 minutes away, 50 minutes away, and they won't change it, you hang up, you call the 1-800-VA number and talk to the VA scheduling people, and they will help you with that. Do not let them, people who are applying for this aren't well in the first place, so don't let them push you around. Next question, Nate. And if you find what he's being examined for, if that comes up, Nate, please let me know. Good afternoon, and thank you for the question and answer. Can you or should you open another claim while you have several pending? From 9+ years, I had been on appeal, but just had 5 of the 7 claims granted with 2 remanded. Always file all the claims that you think you're entitled to. Please don't wait. When you wait, you're just leaving money on the table. I don't know who gives that advice. If I am not saying file claims you're not entitled to, but if you have disabilities that are service connected, file those claims immediately. Anything you'd add to that, Kerry?
No, I agree with that. I mean, it's not a good idea to wait. You're just blowing effective dates. I would say though, don't piecemeal it too much. If you've got things pending for a long time that's been on appeal, and maybe now you've got new issues because those have been there for so long. If you know you got to file, 2, maybe 3 more issues, make sure you do it all all at once. Don't file 2 more issues and then a month later file a third. Get, like Carol said, get them all in as fast as you can all at once. And the ones that have been granted, that may lead to additional secondary issues that you can claim. So make sure you give it some thought and get them all on as few claims as all the issues on as few claims as possible, but get all the issues on there, or else you're just hurting yourself with effective dates, and you're not doing yourself really any favors. I don't think.
Right. Nate? 2003 Iraq, perfect vision. Now per the VA, I need cataract surgery in each eye. I'm 47 years old. My vision is very limited. Can I file a claim? Yes. Do I need a nexus, or is Iraq it? I look forward to Hill and Ponton Wednesday. Thank you. I don't think that's an automatic service connection or presumption. Do you at all?
No, it's not. But you can file a claim. Iraq by itself is not going to get you the nexus, but it's going to raise a question of why. Certainly, you've been exposed to all the issues there in Iraq. So to some extent, there the Pact Act is going to give you, just your service in Iraq is going to basically give you presumed exposure to a number of things, and whether those things cause cataracts or not. Um, there's so much that some of those exposures do cause. I don't know that I could answer that question, but it won't be automatic. The question would rise: why are you getting cataracts at 47 years old that already need surgery? That's a little young, and otherwise, healthy individual.
Right. And it could be you could get a doctor, ophthalmologist, to say that your exposure to this bright sunlight could have caused the early growth of cataracts. But that is something you're going to need a nexus letter for. Mm-hmm. Nate? If you have filed a higher level review and you're waiting on a decision, will it help your claim to contact your senator and request his help, or is that pointless? I have to say that I think it was 2 weeks ago, we had someone, and thank you, we always love it when people have found something that's working for them so that we can share it with everybody. Someone had said, if you call 411 at the White House, that helps. Well, you can't just call 411. We actually found a number for the White House that ended in 411. And I'm not quite sure whether that helped or not. But then we also decided to have our veterans call their senators and congressmen again. Particularly, Kerry and I talked about this before. There are some instances when the BVA will grant benefits, and the case just sits there month after month after month. The norm we're finding is these cases are effectuated right away. That if they granted unemployability, then they've done the rating decision, everything's done in like 3 weeks. But some BVA decisions they've been holding on to. So I had 2 in particular that as soon as I got off that program, I asked them to call. And they called the White House, and they also called their senators and congressmen, and both of them have had rating decisions within the week. So I think that could really help you. Whatever's going on now, they seem to be far more receptive to it than they were before. So with a higher level review, if that hasn't been there, you have to give them a reasonable amount of time. If you've just filed the higher level review, I don't think it's going to help you for you to ask the senator or congressman to help you get that expedited. If you have a reason to have it expedited, let's say that you are evicted, foreclosed, you're homeless, you have the lights foreclosed, lights turned off or utilities turned off, or if you have a Purple Heart or any of the other things, or if you're at the regional office 85 years or older, or if you're terminal, then there's a form you can file. And the VA has been pretty good at expediting your cases at the regional office. You don't need to notify your congressman. So the answer is yes, I think the congressman can help you, but you have to give them, the VA, a certain amount of time. I would say, what, 6 months for a higher level review, Kerry? Before I would.
I think that's a fair
Yeah.
assessment there. Yeah.
I was watching an old stream, and Carol said that if I have a Purple Heart, I can ask for an advance on the docket. You heard that right. If you have a copy, because the VA and the BVA are so reluctant to believe veterans, if you have a Purple Heart, they will advance your case on the docket. I get my clients to send me a copy of their Purple Heart, and then I file it attached to a motion to advance on the docket. And yes, that works. And that also is supposed to work at the regional office as well. So with that, you want to file this form I was talking about, and I can never remember the name of it. Nate, if we can post that during or after the show, there's a form that the VA recognizes as a request to expedite, and you just check which one of the ones you meet: Purple Heart, terminal, homeless, things like that. And the regional office is supposed to expedite your case as well. Got an email from the VA telling me VES was going to contact me for a compensation and pension exam. Called VES. They said it was for a CMP records review. What is that? And is it good or bad? It's neither good or bad. And what it means is that the VA is asking an examiner to review your records and give them an opinion. So it wouldn't be one where they would probably have to contact you. They may be asking, is this person service connected for something? They may be asking, if it's a heart, what METs do they meet? We never know what question it is. So you probably would not be involved, and it's neither good nor bad. You don't know what they're really asking from them. Kerry, I'm trying to give you a break because I know you're having trouble breathing. Are you familiar with NEMA reviews? I got a low rating of 10% for hypothyroidism and no retroactive payment. How do I challenge that? Kerry, you want to do that one?
Sure. Me and Niemer, we're old friends.
That's right.
There's a few things rolled into that question. Yeah, we're familiar with NEMA reviews. A 10% rating for hypothyroidism by itself, with no other residuals, say you're on medicine, that's not necessarily a low rating. That's what most people get, on average for hypothyroidism, or even a 0%. No retro. Some of the
Right, no retroactive payment.
Okay, yeah, some of the words were covered up there. That would be the one I would be more concerned about. If it's a NEMR, we're talking potential earlier effective date. So why was there no retro? Did service connection? Well, I mean, how far did it go back? Did the 10% go back the same distance as service connection? Or did they rate it at 0% and then bump it up to 10 maybe more recently, like from a VA exam? They pull those tricks all the time.
Yes.
And the last thing I would consider that's not on here is, what are the residuals? Hypothyroidism, especially when it's gone untreated for a long time, can lead to a lot of other things. Heart disease, congestive heart failure. That's one of the more serious ones, but there's lots of things that could be a residual of the hypothyroidism. And if that's the case, I would argue that those things need to be adjudicated along with the hypothyroidism claim, as part of that claim, not brand new claims from this point forward. That's going to greatly, if those facts are there, that's going to greatly increase your current rating as well as your potential retroactive rating. So, it's just kind of depending on what's in your case. But those are the kind of the questions I would ask. What's the effective date? Why is that the effective date? Is that the effective date of service connection or just the 10%? Or is there a difference? Did they do 0% back 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years and then just bump it up to 10% here recently? That's a big red flag that they screwed up. And beyond that, the residuals. So that's kind of what I would pay attention to there.
And the way you challenge that is by filing, I would assume this is the first rating you got on that, so you would file a higher level review request. But like Kerry said, what you want to do is say Google things that hypothyroidism causes. And if you have any of those things, those should be on your higher level review appeal, saying, I have these, they were caused by hypothyroidism, and I should be entitled to service connection. Also, you want to look back in your claim file and see, when you had a pending claim, when is the first time that the problem with hypothyroidism showed up? And that should tell you how far back they should go. And you should look and see, what were you getting medication? Was anything happening? Had those other problems, heart, depression, chronic fatigue, had those occurred by then? So it's really good to know what's in your claim file and to make sure you know what's connected to hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism is like I think of sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is bad, but some of the problems it causes are much worse. So if you have those problems, you need to file for them as residuals of the sleep apnea. Same for hypothyroidism. Most people get a much higher rating for the problems hypothyroidism causes than hypothyroidism itself.
Mm-hmm.
The eligibility criteria of PCAFC, I'm sure this is the caregiver, I think that you're asking, has been under congressional review since Congress froze the program for reinforcing eligibility criteria, modified on October 1st, 2020, that are more restrictive than Congress intended. I have no idea when that is going to be finalized. Do you, Kerry? I've got no information on it. Have you?
No, I don't. And I'm, you're getting into the discussion of, is it more restrictive than Congress intended? Man, that's a slippery slope with the caregiver stuff, because, the problems I see with the caregiver stuff is once somebody's on it, VA's ability to just take you off of it, which is just detrimental to the people that need it. That seems to me to historically have been the biggest problem with it. Whether VA is holding people to a higher standard or not, I don't know. The statutory criteria already pretty much requires, in just about any way you read it, at least entitlement to aid and attendance. So it's some pretty strict criteria already there into the statute. I don't know that the VA's globally applying that too strictly, but I do know that once, they have historically not allowed you to appeal, didn't care, why they took you off the program, your legs grew back, there's been some bad stories out there. And that's where the problems have centered, and that's what's gotten most of the attention. But as far as new standards go, I'm not sure when those are coming out, if those are coming out, and exactly why they would be coming out, even that either. So it's hard to know.
Yeah, we've got no inkling. So unfortunately, you know as much as we do. And this is one of the things, if anybody out there hears something, let us know. But we haven't gotten any indication. And we have reps there at Congress who tell us what's going on. So. Is there any way to get the VA to diagnose I have no idea what that is. Anosognosia, especially related to epilepsy. The failure to diagnose and treat this is probably the single greatest cause of suicide. Kerry, are you familiar with this disease? I'm not.
I am no. I don't. I mean, that's a single greatest cause of suicide. I don't know about that. I mean, you're linking epilepsy there to suicide in a roundabout way, and mean, the problem I have with that question is if you have whatever this issue is, a naso, I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Uh, but I would think if it's there, if it's a condition that exists, a healthcare practitioner should be diagnosing it. I mean, so I
Yeah.
don't, when I look at the question, I think, well, yeah, you can't get somebody to diagnose something that doesn't exist, and if it does exist, they should be diagnosing it. So I don't know that I
I
need to
guess
know.
I just the definition is it's a lack of insight is a symptom of severe mental illness experienced by some that impairs a person's ability to understand and perceive his or her illness. It is the single largest reason why people with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder refuse medication or do not seek treatment. This may be something new. We don't know what it is. We didn't know what it was, and I'm afraid it was like PTSD when that first came out. Think how many doctors said there wasn't any such thing. So that may be something. This is a first stage, or so. I'm sorry, I don't think I can help you with that, but I'm definitely going to be looking for that in the future. Hello, I listened to Combat Craig. He mentioned that Hill and Ponton handles back pay issues for veterans. Can anyone help or advise? We do that. That's why when you call in, we ask that you send the documentation and we see if that's something that we can help you with. Looking for my retroactive pay. My disability rating was raised from 50% to 80% effective December 2022. I submitted an August 23rd, 2021 effective date. DFAS states retirement audit was completed. The VA is still lost. Okay, so I'm not sure what you're saying. I think that you said that you applied for it in August of 2021, but it was granted effective December of 2022. That's pretty typical of what the VA does. So I think you should file, instead of an audit, I think you should file a higher level review or a supplemental appeal with maybe additional evidence saying that I applied for and asked for it back then, and not the effective date that they gave us. And I hope that you're still within the year to apply for that. Anything you'd add to that, Kerry?
Well, I see a few different kind of issues stuck in that question.
Right.
Obviously if the effective date December 2022 and your date of claim is August of 2021, that's a problem with the effective date. Carol's right. We see that all the time. VA can't get a dang effective date right to save their life these days. But the DFAS retirement tells me something else. I'm assuming, a 20-year retiree getting retirement pay. So there is going to be an initial offset of any retro, most likely, that you'd be getting even from the December, which wouldn't be much if you got that increase in, say, January. You might see 1 month's of increase there, but of back pay. But the DFAS means let's just say it went back to August 2021, like it should have. DFAS is going to be the reason that VA is going to initially withhold the retro. They're going to take a little while and get with DFAS to figure out how much retirement pay you received. And once they do what's called an audit error worksheet, that's what DFAS sends to VA. VA will then come back and release those funds that it withheld. So if you're looking for those immediately and they haven't showed up, that's probably why. It's varying time frames, 30 days, 6 months. I mean, I've seen a little bit of everything here recently, and it's hard to know why some go faster than others. Why DFAS gets the auditor worksheet in some cases quicker than others. We just don't know.
But Kerry, it says here DFAS states retirement audit was completed. So I don't, like you, Kerry, I don't think there's much that he would be receiving if he found him effective December of 2022.
No, they're right. As far as back pay goes, you're right. What should change going forward is the amount of total combined pay that you're getting, since you should be getting all of that retirement pay plus all of that new 80% compensation rate. But if the audit was completed, has VA done their part and finished their processing since the audit was completed? Because it's not automatic. Once DFAS does the audit, it gets uploaded to VA systems. They initiate an end product that tracks that DFAS processing. They might get it processed within the week, or they might get it processed 2 or 3 months later.
So that's right. I didn't realize that. You're right, Kerry, because I just assumed that he said DFAS state's retirement audit was completed, but that's not one step. Then you have to wait till the VA says that theirs was completed. So that may be what's happened. I don't know how long it's been since the DFAS stated that. To me, though, I think that you should be looking for an earlier effective date and a higher rating if you can do that, because I think that's really going to give you the money. The money from December 2022, I mean, we're only in February now. That's not going to be that much money. I think where your focus should be, what would be going back at least to August of 2021. And remember, you may be able to go earlier that depending on what the medical records show, or how long ago you appealed before that. So that's what I would focus on.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, go after the right effective date, and then get your back pay from that.
And correct rating. That may not be a correct rating.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't see how you're really not looking at any back pay. That could have happened maybe this month, most likely last month. Therefore, you probably got the exam in December 2022. I'm just reading between the lines. And that's what prompted the effective date for the 80%, even though it's incorrect.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe at most 1 month's worth of back pay. That so I wouldn't be focusing on that. I'd be focusing on the effective date, and then get the back pay from all of that.
Remember, the VA, if your effective date, if you get paid, it's raised in December, you don't get the money until January. So. And so if that's December, January would have been the first check that you got for that. And then February would be the second. So you're always paid a month in arrears. Sleep apnea, secondary to chronic SR, your thoughts? Is that claim chronic? Do you know what SR is?
I don't.
I don't either.
SR, chronic. We probably do.
I know it's just.
Yeah.
If you can tell me what SR is, I'll be glad to see if I can help you. Sorry. I'm 20-year service-connected degenerative disc disease, hip radiculopathy, and GERD. I now have sleep apnea and tinnitus. What is the best secondary route toward service-connected except for apnea? Would obesity be the best route to secondary apnea if it can be bridged through service-connected musculoskeletal? I know it's not a rateable condition as it is. Kerry, what would you?
Nate, can we see the first part of that question again?
20-year for degenerative disc disease, hip radiculopathy, and GERD. Now I have sleep apnea and tinnitus. What is the best secondary route toward service connection for apnea?
Yeah, excuse me. I probably would use the weight. Wait, go back to that last part, Nate.
The muscular skeleton causing obesity.
Yeah. I probably would do that. It probably is the best route. Anytime, excuse me, anytime you can throw obesity in as a cause to get to sleep apnea, if you can tie the obesity to a service-connected condition, in my opinion, that's the best way to go after sleep apnea. And we go after it other ways, like secondary to mental health, things like that. But one thing everybody universally agrees with inside these contract examiners is that sleep apnea can be caused by weight gain.
Right.
So use their collective opinions to your benefit. If you can tie it to weight gain instead of mental health, I say tie it to the weight gain, as long as you can tie the weight gain to a service-connected condition. It's going to be hard for them to come back now and say, well, in your case, it's not due to the weight gain. It's due to your mental health condition. It's
Which I would say file for as well. I mean,
yeah.
anybody who has had that pain in their back, their legs, their hips, my goodness, they have to have some depression. And I'm not kidding. If you have that, and don't go by yourself, ask your significant other, am I depressed? Do I have anxiety? And they'll be honest with you. And I think that may be something you should file for as well. I have a letter from the Department of Defense that says my unit was in a chemical environment area during Desert Storms /Shield. Can I use this letter to submit for most of the issues I'm having? Yes, you can submit it. But then the Department of Defense, there's how much were you exposed to? Isn't that what they're doing, Kerry? These aren't the easiest cases you'd think you would get.
I'm guessing what he's talking about is the letter on Camasia. If I'm pronouncing that right, that was the nerve gas event where we destroyed uh, a number of munitions, and in those munitions there were nerve gas canisters that caused a plume of nerve gas. It's called the Camasia event, and DOD was putting letters in there about people being near that. And so, yeah, that's going to show that DOD's conceded you might have been exposed to low levels of nerve gas. I don't know if you can submit it as support of most of the issues because we don't know what issues that you have. But yeah, it's going to help with establishing exposure. Now, at the same time, the Pact Act already establishes the exposure. It's not like you're going to have to prove you were exposed to environmental contaminants. If you were in Iraq, or Afghanistan, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, then you were, as a matter of law. It just depends on what disabilities that you're going for.
So Kerry, it's whether or not the issues that he has are presumptive. So if one of the issues he has, even though he has that letter, he's probably going to need a nexus letter, don't you think, from a doctor?
Right. If they're not presumptive, then yeah, I'd say definitely so. So it just depends on what there's a lot of presumptive issues now compared to this time last year, but there's still obviously a lot of gaps. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, that letter is going to help you, but it really depends on what particular issue you have. If the issue is presumptive, you should be good. If it's not, you may need a nexus letter.
Yeah, I was in that area, so I'm a little familiar with the whole Camasia event.
That's just another reason why you're such a great source, Kerry.
Yeah.
I have 10% service connection for each knee laxity, 10% for painful motion of each knee. I have left hip bursitis, 10%, and residuals, right hip injury, 10%. I see no indications of 2/3 extra 10% for bilateral factor in rating sheet. Have I been getting hosed for knees since 2010 and hips since 2021? What step do I take to correct this? Will or can I get paid to 2010 or 2021? Decision just made last year. Kerry, what would you do? What would you be? Would you do two different things or?
Well, so it sounds like the question is, have they calculated the bilateral factor correctly?
Right.
So if I could answer the last part of that question first, if you can prove throughout the years, be it last month or 10 years ago or whatever, that they were paying you the incorrect rate because of an incorrect bilateral factor calculation, then absolutely they owe you that back pay. That would be a clear and unmistakable error. Now the question is, did they calculate it incorrectly? That's obviously what you have to find out. Now, if hips do count, okay, knees do count, any compensable rating for the bilateral extremities that you have ratings when it comes to each extremity counts. So let's say you have 10% for each knee. That means both lower extremities are calculated in the bilateral factor. Now that you have both lower extremities in there, 10% for each knee, anything else that you add as a compensable rating to either one of those lower extremities also now gets calculated into that bilateral factor. So, for example, you had 10% for each knee. Now throw in one hip, also at 10%. That hip is to be calculated with both those knees. It doesn't have to be both hips, right? If you just had the knee at 10, one knee at 10%, say the other knee at 0%, and you got 10% for the hip on the same leg that you have 10% for the knee, but the other leg you only have a 0% for a knee, you don't have a bilateral factor. It has to be compensable. It could be the hip on one leg and the knee on the other leg. That works too. As long as there's something compensable for each extremity, then you throw in all of the compensable disabilities for both of those extremities, starting with the hip and on down. So
Kerry, in other words, what if he had a left elbow and a right knee?
that is not going to count because those are not bilateral extremities. One's an upper extremity, one's a lower extremity. I mean, they're bilateral, but they're not. You know, it's not. That's not. Be both lower extremities, both upper extremities. So
my other question is, are you sure that they didn't compensate you for that? You know, what we get is the code sheet. So that's the sheet that shows exactly where they got the rating and how, whether they combined it and whether there was bilateral and what percentage they gave. And all veterans don't get it, as far as I know. So one thing I would do is I would not lose my appeal date. I'd go ahead and appeal, but you also may want to write a letter and say, can you send me a copy of the code sheet? I think that would be helpful for you to look at. And be down at the bottom, after they give you the rating for each thing that's service connected, it says combined, and then it would note under that any bilateral. So that would be really important for you to see as well.
Yeah.
Anything else you recommend?
Well, it'll tell you what diagnostic codes that they use to compute the bilateral factor, and it'll then tell you what that bilateral factor is. So if you see them not using all of the diagnostic codes that go into each bilateral extremity, then you know it's easy to figure out. In other words, if I saw 4 or 5 code sheets from all your ratings, I could tell you pretty quickly if they got the bilateral factor right or not. So.
Right.
You know, and you can't tell it without the code sheets. You
can't. Yeah. So don't lose the appeal date for 2021. You can file Q for 2010, but get that code sheet and see where you are. Mm-hmm. I was approved for caregiver recently. I was denied aid and attendance, which I appealed to the BVA. I'm rated SMC-M, loss of use of both feet, plus 100% bowel incontinence. My disabilities, which are separate and distinct from my loss of use, are 100% bowel incontinence, 60% IVD, that's the back, 50% PTSD, and 30% pelvis. Can I use these disabilities to fight for aid and attendance, which will grant me SMC R1, or do I need to hire you guys? Kerry, you're my main man on SMCs.
Okay. What you need to do there is take the loss of use of the lower extremities out of this picture. All right. If that's causing the need, in addition to the other stuff, for aid and attendance, then you're not going to get what you're looking for because you're already getting SMC for the loss of use of the lower extremities. All right. So you need something else that's going to give you another rate of L through N, L being aid and attendance. So if, for example, the bladder and bowel and intervertebral disc syndrome and PTSD and everything but the loss of use is causing you to need aid and attendance of somebody else, and you can support that and show it from a factual and medical standpoint, now you've got an avenue to get to R1. you can't do that, you don't have an avenue to get to R1. And from what you're saying there, it sounds like you're pretty close.
Right.
If you're 100% bladder and bowel, 60 for IVDS, one, it's hard to get 60 for IVDS. I mean, I could see that stuff causing, depending on the fact pattern, somebody needing an attendance without the loss of use of the legs.
Exactly. And remember, you want to point out how your inability to take care of yourself because of the bowel incontinence, the IBD, PTSD is a health problem. You forget to take a bath. You're not able to take a bath by yourself. You're not able to fix or eat your own meals, or you forget to take your medicine. As much as you can show that this interferes with your health significantly, just these things, and it seems to me they certainly would, I think that you should go for that. So you want to get your doctor to do an DBQ, disability benefits questionnaire, and the only disabilities you should list are the ones that Kerry noted: the 100% bowel incontinence, 60% IBDS, 50% PTSD, and 30% pelvis. Do not mention or talk about the loss of use of feet, and get the doctor to note why these specific things require you to need an attendance. Inability to clean yourself. You don't know how often you're going to have accidents. That is a real health problem if you can't clean yourself. The back certainly looks like it would prevent you from bending over, from doing a lot of things that you would need to get in the shower and get out of the shower and clean yourself. So I think you have a good claim for that, but you need to do it correctly.
And do you need to hire us? Well, maybe.
So if you contact us, let us know it was this particular, so we will know.
Yes, I mean there are people that are going to deny that claim.
Yes.
Even when you get the evidence pointing in the way it should be.
Kerry, what I worry about is if he's at the BVA, is he where he already had to turn in all the evidence? So yes, I think you have a case that I'd be concerned about winning. I don't know if it's a VA-9, then you can still get the evidence in, but it needs to be right. Mm-hmm. So yes, this is something we could definitely help you with. What is meant by state stressor for PTSD? I'm a Viet Vet Guam Pact Act claim, and my claim is pending because I have minimum information. And I think this is maybe a little too minimum information for me. But is it a Vietnam veteran Guam Pact Act claim? Do you think that's what he's saying?
I think he's saying he's a Vietnam era veteran who served in Guam and is now presumed exposed to herbicides because of the Pact Act.
But I don't know what that would have to do with state stressor for PTSD.
Yeah, that's what throws me off. So if you've got a mental health claim for PTSD for something that occurred on Guam, if that's what I'm reading correctly, the Pact Act per se is not going to have an effect on that. If you've got something that's herbicide related, it would. What now? State stressor for PTSD. I gotta think that's you might be reading the statement wrong. Or did they say state the stressor for PTSD? If that's the case, then yeah, you want to tell them what the stressor is for PTSD.
In other words, what is the traumatic incident that occurred that created the PTSD? So that's what I would think, Kerry. If somebody says, tell me what the stressor is for PTSD, that's what I would think, but I don't understand how it would have anything else to do with the other part of the question. Yeah.
So I think you've got two different issues going on.
Right. Hello, will filing a request, what is the BCMR? To retroactively change a discharge to a medical interfere with an appeal at the BVA. I've been waiting on a decision and don't want to throw a wrench in that. What is the BCMR, Kerry? Do you know?
That is the Board for Correction of Military Records.
Okay.
So we'll file a request. It will not interfere with an appeal before the BVA. It's strictly a DOD issue while it's at the BCMR. Um, and, the evidence is going to be there for BVA or it's not.
Right.
If you got a discharge upgrade, as long as you're not talking about something that was not honorable, it sounds like you're wanting to go from honorable to medical. That's not going to change really the facts in the record before the board. So I don't think that one's going to have the BCMR is not going to have an effect on the BVA, in my opinion.
You might notice that Kerry thought this was bring your dog to work day. If I'd have known, I'd have had my dog. You didn't tell me, Kerry.
He got out.
I got mine here the other week, so.
He's usually in the background somewhere, although he's usually too lazy to come bother me while I'm in a video.
Well, next time tell me and I'll have honey, okay?
He is rather large, so it's a big fur ball.
Good afternoon. If an elderly veteran has no service connection, can they get help through the VA, 82 years of age? Thank you for all you do. You're welcome. There's a question. I need help at home with meals and meds. That's what I was going to say specifically.
I think.
What would you have them file, Kerry? And I think it depends on their finances, right?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, I'd file for health care. You're talking about meals and meds and things like that. It sounds like you're getting into the pension world, depending on your financial situation. So if your financial situation is not really well, odds are you're beneath the means threshold for VA healthcare. You're an honorably discharged vet. That would give you access to VA healthcare. So that's one of the first things I'd file for. Because it doesn't sound like you're asking about a disability claim. You may have a claim there as well, depending on what happened in the service. But let's just say there's not that. You just want to get whatever VA benefits that you're entitled to. You're not going to file a claim. I would get enrolled in healthcare and see to what extent that you could get at least the meds or Meals on Wheels or something like that through the local VA healthcare system. So that's where I'd start.
And then if it depends on the income, you may be entitled to pension if you served during time of war. Mm-hmm. So I think, yes, you should contact the VA. And then if you have a pension and you need help around the home, then you would be entitled to that as well. Some people that get very little money from the pension still get more benefits under the aid and attention. So,
and you just go to the main, the easiest way to do that. You don't want to do it online and all that. Is go to the closest main VA medical center. Go to the eligibility office. Tell them you want to apply for healthcare. They'll sit you down and do the paperwork, and it's relatively painless. Take your discharge paperwork if you've never done anything with VA before. It should be fine.
Yeah, do go apply. My husband recently 100% permanent and total TDIU with 90% disability. You say don't refile since he's 100% P&T, but VA denies his most significant issue is service connected. What if that issue causes future needs? Well, that's a whole different thing. I think that a lot of times what Matt's saying and Kerry and I are saying is if you don't need it, if you have 100% and the filing won't give you anything in addition, then don't mess with it. But if this is something that's very important, like Parkinson's, for goodness sake, get that, because that's going to be an ongoing problem. Kerry, anything else you see that would go with that question?
Yeah, I guess. No, I mean, Carol's 100% right. If it's something like Parkinson's or something that's going to potentially lead to additional benefits, I'd go for it. Now, if it's this most significant disability, just because it's the most serious, I mean, can you get it service connected? What's the strength of the case? what's that going to change for you? How long have you had the current P&T? If you've just gotten it and just getting it service connected, this other significant issue, it's not going to change anything for you right now. Maybe you leave well enough alone. If it is going to change, maybe you go for it. If it's something that you don't need to do right now, can always do later, and you want to not jeopardize anything you have now, it may just be a time thing of when you file for the claim. So it's, there's no one size to do this.
Right. Without knowing more, it's really hard to answer. Remember, once you're 100%, which you are, then any medical problem is covered already, whether it's service connected or not. So if that's the only thing you're worried about, then you don't need to worry about it. So remember, if you're 100%, they have to pay for hearing aids. Doesn't matter if you're service connected for that. Glasses, dental, you don't have to be service connected for any of it. The VA will cover that. So if that's your worry, that takes it off the.
Now, what a lot of people worry about, what about death benefits?
Right.
Something happens to your husband. Well, again, it's a maybe. It depends, because if he's 100% permanent total for 10 years or more, even if he's not permanent, 100% for 10 years or more, and that includes TDIU, then it doesn't matter what he passes away from, you're going to get DIC.
Right.
So that if that's the case, it may help if he just got the service connect, the TDIU, and he's got 9.5 years to go before he reaches that 10-year point. And this is something that's going to be terminal, and it's going to be the cause of anything related to a death claim. Well, then maybe you do go for it. So it's still it depends depending on the case.
And that just, we're trying to give you the best information we can give you with the information you give us. And that's always one of the problems, to really feel like I've given the best information, I have to have read your claim file. I have to have seen everything in your case. So we're just giving you the best information with the question that we have. And like Kerry and I just now tried to think of all the things that would be involved with whether or not you should file for another issue. So I hope that we gave you enough. And if you still need more information, maybe you could give us a little more on the question. First time PTSD claim was very weak, was denied. Now have strong personal statement, stressor, buddy statements, can talk symptoms. Can I do supplemental with statements but without private diagnosis? I think you're going to need if you don't have a diagnosis of a mental problem, I don't know. I don't even know if they'll give them a CMP exam. Do you, Kerry?
I'm reading back through
it. Either the VA has to diagnose you with a mental illness or a private doctor, but I'm concerned that if you have no diagnosis of a mental problem. Now I have won a case with that, but I would try to get I would file the claim, but try and get a diagnosis.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get the diagnosis, get the diagnosis. I mean, when it really comes down to nuts and bolts of claims development 101, does VA have to extend its duty to assist you if you can't show them that you have a claim that could possibly be service connected? And the answer is no, they don't. In a lot of situations, you could say you have all the conditions in the world. If you can't at least show the VA that you have the diagnosis of what you're claiming, in most cases, it doesn't work across the board. But typically, if somebody says, "Hey, I've got a mental health condition," they can show they're getting treatment for some kind of mental health condition.
Right. Some kind, any kind.
If they're getting none, the VA can say, "Sorry, we're not going to examine you. We're going to deny your case because you can't show us at least the threshold level of evidence that we need to consider your claim." So
Kerry,
yeah.
I'm seeing that a lot more often than I saw in the past. I think that the VA has so many claims. They're so busy that they are very quick not to order CMP exams. If they can find a reason not to do it, I'm finding they don't do it. And in this situation, I would think they would probably not give you one. So file the claim as soon as possible, get into someone and complain about all these problems so they can give you a diagnosis and get that into the VA. Hi, I'm at 80% right now. I need to add GERD, rhinitis, and anxiety. Would this raise it to 100%? If you can get it service connected and they give you a reasonable rating, absolutely.
I'd like, Carol, could I address a question that I've seen before and I see it again?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
This might upset someone, and I apologize. It's not meant to upset anyone. I've seen this advice from one of our viewers in the past. It's probably the same advice. I now see it again. And so please don't take this personally. I don't mean to be insulting, but there's some advice floating around the comments saying the easiest way to get to 100% is to go get yourself Baker-Acted. And apparently that's going to be your magic ticket to 100%. If you're going to commit yourself into a psychiatric institution, if you don't, here, my problem with that advice is, you're telling some people to go commit fraud.
Yeah.
All right. And that's all you need to do to get to 100%. And you don't need a lawyer. You don't need a lawyer in a lot of situations. Okay. You don't need to waste 15 years in a lot of situations. I say that because that was in the comment, but just carte blanche, go get yourself Baker-Acted and that'll get you 100%. That's just not going to do it by itself in a lot of situations. And
No,
if you don't,
not.
if you don't need to be Baker-Acted, you could be somebody that doesn't know any better of what Baker-Acted even means. Could literally be committing fraud. And so be careful when you're giving advice like this. That's hopefully I didn't say that to upset anybody, but I've seen that time and time again, and I'm sorry, I just don't agree with the advice, and it probably shouldn't be on our forum. So
I don't either. And let me tell you something. I did Social Security disability for 30 years. And it used to be that the judges were reasonable, they listened to you. And then there was a lot of that going on, a lot of people fraud as far as the administration was concerned. And now in order to get Social Security disability, it is so difficult. So you don't want to do that to the veteran system. You don't want the VA is bad enough at thinking about veterans being malingerers or not. Don't give them more action for that. And let me tell you, that Baker Act, I would be shocked if that gave you what you want. Let me give you some examples. I have veterans who actually go into the PTSD program where they are institutionalized for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, 100% while they're in, 10% when they get out. The VA doesn't necessarily do that. Baker Acted, 100% if they're in a long time, more than 21 days, drop them right back down when they get out. So the advice is worrisome on a number of fronts. So I would ask you, please don't tell people to do that. And being Baker-Acted doesn't look like it's a lot of fun to me either. Nate? Nate, did you go get Baker-Acted? Here we go. Hello there. I was recently granted a 20% raise for peripheral neuropathy that goes back to 2012. Well, will I get back pay? It really depends on what that combines your rating. Does that make the rating in 2012 higher than it was? In other words, if you were already at 100% and say you have SMCS, that may not. If you say you were at 20%, then that's definitely going to give you additional benefits. So it really depends on what your rating was all the way back.
Yeah.
I have a family member that died on active duty of stomach cancer at age 25 after being at Camp Lejeune 2016 to 18. Does the Pact Act or Camp Lejeune suit apply to them? No VA claim was filed. Kerry, what would you advise them?
Uh, as far as as far as I know, that does not get you into the Pact Act Camp Lejeune stuff, because it's outside the window for Camp Lejeune itself. That window closed in the end of 1987, I believe. Um, and anything after that is not included in uh, the Camp Lejeune stuff. Now, having said that, as far as you know, who would file the claim? This happened on active duty. If there's children, if there's a spouse, those benefits should be automatic.
Right.
You know, if there's no children, no spouse, unfortunately, there's no dependent. I suppose parents could, could file a lawsuit with Camp Lejeune. I don't think it's really going to apply with those dates of service, but so it may be the wrong question being asked. So if they're 25 years old, that's obviously really young, uh, but that's 30 plus years after the supposed cleanup at Camp Lejeune. So that's not going to get you the presumption. But if it's children or a spouse, DIC should be, basically automatic. So should the insurance costs and all that should automatically go to those family members. So, it may not be something that the Camp Lejeune Act is even needed in that respect.
Thanks, Kerry. I'm rated 100% totally and permanently disabled, service connected, 30% due to being unemployable at higher level. Can I rent my house out without it affecting my VA income? If it would affect my VA income, no, it wouldn't. If you're renting your house, they're looking for earned income for a job. Now, if your job was to rent out 50 houses a year, not houses that you own, then that would be different. But renting your own house, I don't think that's income. Do you, Kerry? Oh, I'm killing you.
No, I'm okay. So I agree with you. I guess I would ask too, how is that filed on taxes? Is it, excuse me, is it counted as income on taxes?
Yes, it's counted.
Yeah.
It is counted as income, but I think that somebody to rent their house, assuming it's like any other piece of rental property, you're renting it, but it's not. It's more of it's an unearned income source.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if it's not on your taxes, I would say you got no problem. Some people do cash, that kind of thing.
but even if it's on even if it's on your taxes, if it's unearned income on rental property, I don't think that would be a problem at all.
Like you said, if you had half a dozen rentals and that's how you make your
Right,
money,
that's different.
yeah, I could see that being an issue. Then when you're just doing it for your own house, maybe
Right.
renting a room out of your house while you're living in it, I don't think that would affect anything.
Right. How do I apply for a helpless child program? Also, will I benefit from it? I don't know what the helpless child program is unless it's the disabled child before they turn age 18.
I think that's probably what it is.
So if you have VA benefits, if you're service connected and you have a disabled child, well, if the child is under 18 then and at home going to school, then you're already entitled to a dependent benefit. But if the child is disabled when they turn 18, then that child will continue to be a dependent and get benefits even though they're not going to school and they're older than 18. So I'm not sure what the question is. Or say that the veteran dies and leaves behind a child who was disabled before they turned age 18, that child would be entitled to benefits. So I don't, anything you'd add to that, Kerry?
I don't think so.
Okay. Currently, the IDS process in the IDS process and was denied that are in my record, and the examiner said it was likely as not due to my service. Do I have any options?
Well, you've always got options. I would say, where in the IDES process are you? Are you still on active duty? IDES is Integrated Disability Evaluation System.
So that means a person is still in the military.
Correct. Correct. So they're in the process of getting transitioned out usually on disability. So these would be issues that, I would have to agree with the person who asked the question. It would be in someone's military records. So why would you be getting denied service connection for them? You can appeal those IDES decisions like any other decision, but your options with VA may be limited while you're still on active duty. Because you obviously can't start getting compensation until you're off active duty. You can always appeal through the IDES process if you want to fight DOD on the issues. Or you can let the IDES stuff go through and still appeal just the VA side of the rating once you're out of the military and they effectuate that decision. So it depends on your circumstances and what you're going for. If you're already getting medically retired, it's not going to affect your DOD stuff. I might wait and just fight it on the VA side. But obviously, it depends on the circumstances of your case there, I think.
And the only extra advice I'd give you is make sure you have a copy of all of your service medical records. Sometimes they get lost, and so get a copy before you get out. Can painful motion during a shoulder C&P exam equate to compensable functional loss? The examiner noted painful motion, not loss of motion under shoulder level. Kerry?
Yeah, painful motion should be compensable, period. In my opinion, the way my reading of the law, and I think the court's analysis of, 4.55 or anyway, we'll get in the regs, but painful motion should be at the very least the minimally compensable rate. So
right.
If you got full range of motion but it hurts, you should still get 10% for that.
I was recently diagnosed with costochondritis, but don't know the cause. Is it a claimable disability through secondary or primary disability?
It is, if you have a route to service.
Right.
Just like anything else. And that's just, chest pain in your sternum, as I understand it. If you were in service 20 years ago, you're probably going to have a little bit of an issue showing how that's related to service. But nonetheless, it is a claimable.
Right. And if you can show you recently got out, you had that in a service, then that's a much stronger claim. Question, Pact Act. Does registering for the Pact Act jeopardize your present disability rating? Thanks in advance. I wouldn't know. No. No, go for it. Should I keep uploading everything I can find in support of my claims on the first round or wait and see their decision so I have more ammo for additional follow-up claims? It's kind of strategy. What do you think, Kerry?
If what you're not uploading is helpful to the claim, then you might be setting yourself up to fail for the first round.
Right.
You can't predict if somebody's that's going to get your case, knows how to spell VA or they don't. So don't do something that that's obviously going to potentially detriment the claim from the beginning. Get everything in there.
Yeah.
If they don't address something that's pertinent and it's favorable to your case, go to a higher level review and point that out to the person. And that's how you use it in that situation, rather than coming back and doing a new claim with the same team that's already denied it. The supplemental claim teams, man, those guys, I bash them all the time, but good Lord, they just make some terrible decisions. I think the DROs are pretty much there to fix everything else these days. Well, some things. So yeah, don't hold back your good evidence.
No.
Yeah.
Because like Kerry says, then if you put everything in, then you can go to the higher level review. And often those people are a little more knowledgeable and a little more favorable. So I definitely wouldn't hold anything back that's good for your claim. Is there a 38 CFR that compels the VA rater to give the veteran a favorable decision if the CFR changed to now include the systems that could not be considered before the change to the M21 or CFR? I don't, Kerry, it's kind of, I'm not sure what the real question is.
Well, let's see. I'm not sure the last half of that question.
Right.
I'm sorry for the coughing. But is there a part that compels the rater to issue a favorable decision? Let's stop right there. My favorite parts in that relation are 3.102 and 3.103. One's the benefit of the doubt, the other one's due process, and a part of the due process reg says VA is to award every benefit supported by the law while taking into consideration the taxpayer, for something like that. My interpretation of taking into consideration the taxpayer is don't award benefits when they're not legally allowed to be awarded. Right. All right, but when they're when the law and the facts support a grant everything that is grantable, period, and then do that by affording the veteran the benefit of the doubt at every stage. So those two regs, in my opinion, answer the first half of that question. Grant everything that's grantable by affording the veteran the benefit of the doubt on any question that might be in doubt. Beyond that, I'm not sure how to answer the last part of that.
I'm not sure what the question is, and I'm sorry. Last question. What about veterans that were exposed to burn pits prior to 1991? I slept next to a burn pit in Norway in 1981 and acquired asthma the same year in the U.S. Marine Corps upon return to the States.
Well, it's like anything else. If you can show the exposure and you can get the nexus, you can still win that claim. But now, right. I hear a lot of people talk about burn pits prior to burn pits being recognized. And obviously, I don't know what you slept next to in Norway. But these burn pits that VA is considering a burn pit for benefit purposes, these things are big, right? Very big. The biggest was 30 acres.
Enormous.
So they're measured by the size of football fields. They're not a campfire. And so that's the difference. So I
mean, these were so big they had trucks and huge equipment in them burning, right?
Right. And that doesn't mean they weren't doing that in Norway. It doesn't mean there wasn't an isolated event that somebody was exposed to same or similar. But you just have to figure out how to show VA evidence that there was an exposure, and then that led to your asthma. That's how you win, just any other claim. That's how you just have to win this one.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for listening with us today. And Kerry, really, thank you for coming in when I know you should be in bed taking care of yourself. And we look forward to seeing you next